Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2:15 session, Why Data Lineage is Your Answer to ESG. I'm Eric Bigelson, Global Head of Industry Engagement and Senior Advisor to the ESG Work Group at the EDM Council. And I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists. First, Phil Dutton, who's the CEO and co-founder of Solidatus. Phil, welcome. And
Thanks
also two esteemed colleagues of ours that have been working tirelessly on the ESG work group. But I'd like to introduce both Sharon Basel, from General Motors. She's Senior Manager of Sustainability, and Ginny, Cassidy, Director of Enterprise Sustainability at Medtronic. So thank you all for joining today, and look forward to a very informative session. Philip, I'll turn it over to you. Oh, one other thing. Unfortunately, there was a illness. Johnny Mattimore from First Derivative, he was supposed to be on the panel, but unfortunately he took ill, so I'm going to actually attempt to replace him. So I just want to give a shout out to Johnny. Hope he's feeling better.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Eric, and thanks for all the panelists for joining and all the members for tuning in. So I think, first of all, I think all of us are aware that ESG is becoming, really very, very predominant in all walks of life and across all industries. And really, this ESG concept is much more complex than I think anyone kind of originally thought it would be. It is bringing a number of factors together, and it's, as I mentioned, is gaining significant impact across the business space. There is emergence of whole new sets of principles of ethics, of requirements for disclosure, of regulations, new standards, new ratings methodologies, new data, old data that is coming from third-party sources. This really is a huge data management challenge. Just when we thought we were starting to get on top of data management within a singular organization, we're now being asked to do this across multiple organizations. If we look at some of the recent findings and the recent statistics that have come out around this area, this is the biggest thing that we've had to deal with from a data management perspective. It's got focus all the way up to the CEO level, and the regulators are also putting significant focus on this, as we all wish to improve the way that we're dealing with the environment, how we're governing our organizations, and really that social impact is also equally as critical. And recent findings from the European Bank has said that they've found that 65% of banks which they've assessed aren't ready to deal with this climate and environmental risk based off these ESG reportings. That's not even considering their supply chain that feeds into them. So this is a significant challenge that we're being exposed to. So if we can move to the next slide. And as I mentioned, ESG isn't a singular concept. This is a very, very complex framework that is being built by lots and lots of different parties with different perspectives, not-for-profit organizations, NGO, business groups. The regulators all have a different view on what this means. What does ESG mean here? And we can see from this wheel that actually there is a real differentiation of focus, of purpose, of data that we're trying to bring under this one umbrella. And this framework, singular framework, is being used by about sort of 73% of the world's largest 250 organizations. This is the Global Reporting Initiative, so a framework. But this is one of a significant number, and it's how do you look at and how do you understand your organization against the backdrop of so many different taxonomies that describe this area. So I think if we move the questions for our panelists, I think we're all aware that it's a huge challenge. This is something that we've got to face, and we've got to face it actually quite quickly. Some of the regulations that are coming in are very, very imminent. So focusing first to, if I might go to Ginny. So the appetite for ESG, data is huge. We know that organizations are really looking at across their estate, where do we get this data? What challenges, what are the key challenges around that collation, that collection, and the accuracy in reporting that you've seen from your organization?
Sure. Well, probably the biggest one is just having the documented processes and controls similar to those that you have around financial data. That is something, I think, a fairly new concept for some of us that have been doing ESG or sustainability reporting for many years. Is there just wasn't a requirement to have as many checks and balances and the SOX-like controls. And the other challenge is that ESG data, as you mentioned, there's so many things that fall under the ESG umbrella that it's coming from just a variety of places, both internally and externally. And so there's a different level of, some areas may have very robust IT data platforms and others don't. And so one of the things that we've been working on in Medtronic over the last couple of years is to make those data collection processes more robust and to build in some of those controls that get us closer to being on par with financial reporting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raised that really good point is that juxtaposition of where we are with financial reporting versus where we are with ESG and the huge chasm that we've got to cross because of those variances of data is a huge challenge. And Sharon, for you at General Motors, what's been the sort of the key challenges that you've seen?
I think exactly what Ginny has shared are the challenges. But the added challenge is that things are moving so fast. And in some aspects, there are areas within that really haven't even caught up yet with just sustainability or ESG reporting in general. And so now you're really asking them to leap into a whole different and more complex environment in terms of the kinds of documentation, process, and controls that are required and going to be even more critical going forward. And so, some of the ways that, that I would offer is, helpful is to really become friends with your controllership and SEC reporting folks to get a better idea of, what are those things, those controls and processes and documentation and data management area already in the organization and work with them to be able to overcome some of that initial challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point as well, is trying to reuse things that you've already established in other areas, trying to leverage the work that you've been done around data governance and around data management in an organization, because this is a new area of focus, but the principles of what we're trying to do remain the same. And I think you touched also on that the regulations are currently being laid down. And so they're going to evolve over time. We've got to understand kind of that transition of where we are now compared to where we'll be in a year when, the regulations get, more ratified and more stabilized. I think that's, we're still in that shifting sands phase. And Eric, are you seeing that across like the industry? Obviously, you've been focused with the EDM Council on the ESG working groups. What are you seeing sort of on a broader picture?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Sharon and Ginny have said. It's a hugely dynamic marketplace that's evolving and developing with changing and evolving standards and regulations and huge amounts of confusion and complexity with understanding all the related ESG and sustainability issues. And on top of that, I'd also submit that many companies don't even really have mature data management programs themselves and processes. Clearly GM and Medtronic, are some of the largest companies out there, and then many of the large companies, have moved to develop their, disclosure reporting, some time ago to address various stakeholder needs. But the reality is many companies don't have, data management processes in place. So when you add something that's, exponentially more complex than just financial reporting in and of itself. It really is going to be a challenge to these organizations to understand where the data comes from, what data do they need, data quality, data governance, and then incorporating that into everything from disclosure, reporting, audit, assurance. So the entire ecosystem, is really something that's highly complex, and that's why so many people are trying to reach out and ask questions, and that's why panels like this really help to provide, hopefully, good information and some awareness.
Yeah, I mean, I think you also touched on some really critical points there. Is and I think going back to Sharon, in regards to how your organization has built this in, for organizations who haven't done it, who haven't even started to think about the governance practices around sustainability reporting, etc. What are the principles that you followed, and that what level of I guess ingrainedness have you built into the organization? Is this kind of the thin veneer over the top, or is this something that GM is living and breathing because it has to?
We are living and breathing this. And I will say that I just feel we are really fortunate because leadership and direction come from the top in terms of the board of directors. And anytime it's coming that way through the organization, it moves very rapidly and a lot of support. And particular to that point, our chief accounting officer has actually supported us in the sustainability reporting and data collection extra heads that he actually had funded help us get these controls and processes and documentation in place for this reporting year. And that happened really very quickly, and help us understand those processes and systems that are in use in SEC reporting, that we can bring that over immediately and use that as we go forward. And we may develop some data management systems, for instance, as we go forward. But right now, they're helping us bridge that gap.
Great. I mean, I think that top down, having that support at the senior level really does help. I think it's critical to getting the organization moving. And Ginny, in your organization, has it been a similar type top down leadership approach?
Yes, I would say that Medtronic is a very mission-driven company, and we have a mission that's 60 years old. And an interesting exercise we went through a couple of years ago, when the board was engaging more regularly on ESG as sort of a broad topic, was, how does it connect to our mission? And so in the last couple of reports we've put out, we've made really clear connections to our ESG, our priority ESG issues, and where they align with different tenets of our mission. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very good demonstration of how it's ingrained in our company, our approach to these issues. Likewise, we're seeing a lot more engagement from the top down around our reporting, disclosure, around one of my experience coming from more of a communications background, getting into sustainability. I don't know necessarily the data audit, financial reporting side. And what's been helpful with more people getting engaged is people are starting to reach out to me who have that expertise. We're getting connected to the right people to take the steps that we're taking now around, we've had a sustainability steering committee at the company since 2016 that has several members of our executive committee and other executives associated with our priority issues. But we launched a subset of that within the last year, and it's our ESG disclosure committee. So it operates more like a disclosure committee for financial reporting. We talked about whether or not it belonged there. We decided at this point it should be separate, but we have a representative from that external reporting team who serves on our ESG disclosure committee.
Yeah, I mean, and you kind of highlighted a couple of really critical points there. I think, that connectivity of the organization, to its data is really important. I think it leads kind of nicely into the next question that I have, because I think one of the things that Eric and I were talking about kind of prior to today was how do we help people move from that defensive position where it's just focusing on what do we have to report, to how can we use data management and the things that we're putting in place around ESG to move us forward proactively? How can we help to move the organization forward? And coming from, I guess, a data management company where data lineage, that understanding of how data is connected to process and people and policy is really important to us. But I wanted to sort of to see your thoughts on how you think the data management practice of linking these disparate data sets together is helping an organization. Maybe Sharon, if we go to yourself.
Sure. We've sort of taken an approach over the last 6 years that the reporting should help drive performance and performance. So, there's a purpose behind the disclosure of the data that we've chosen to be very transparent about, and a real strategy about that help drive improved performance of the company, whether it is in inclusion data and breakout on workforce demographics, whether it is climate performance and emissions and where we're going on that, all the way to impacts that we're having in communities and investments and job growth and that sort of thing. So it hasn't just been reporting for reporting's sake on a volunteer basis. It's been really, what are the data points that we can reflect on, report publicly, that will help drive better performance of the company and improve the positive impacts that we have externally over time.
Yeah, and Eric, from the EDM Council and that broader industry, what have you seen around the connected data sets, understanding kind of that lineage of where your data comes from? How can you trust it? What have you seen across that space?
Mm-hmm. Where it comes from, and can you trust it? That's a really interesting question, because there are two facets, I think, of ESG related data. One, tends to be the direct data that companies are able to produce themselves based upon their carbon emissions, their diversity of employees, other related issues with regards to ESG factors, and that's clearly called direct data. The indirect data comes from everything that's sort of upstream, from the supply chain, or downstream, as to how their products and services are consumed in the marketplace. And that really adds a significant element of complexity, where companies that are responsible for disclosure and reporting have this added responsibility now for how do they ensure, the data quality coming from various suppliers and other constituents, or how consumers. And those are some of the things that are highlighted clearly in Scope 2 and Scope 3 carbon emissions. So it's really not clear how companies are going to solve for that problem, or how the regulators will in fact enforce companies from a reporting and disclosure standpoint to solve for that problem, when a lot of that data is not uniquely the company's data in of itself. So it adds a huge degree of complexity, which is going to take a lot of cool minds to think through how do we best solve for that. But again, ESG is going to be with us for a long time, and it's going to take some time to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for sure. One of the things that we've been looking at is that in an organization on your own, trying to do reporting really accurately and well and timely, just with the data that you own is a significant challenge, especially for global multinational organizations that have locations and a whole variance of systems and different processes. And then when you step outside that to, all of my supply chain needs to supply me with quality data in order for me to effectively report. I think you're right, Eric. It's going to take a while for us to untangle the supply chain web, so we can efficiently get that data in, because controlling someone outside of your organization to say this is the data I need is really very, very difficult. In terms of, I guess, tips that we would put forward to businesses who are starting on this journey, that haven't had that longevity in the space and haven't had the experience, and maybe don't have the same data management, data governance infrastructure in place. Ginny, what would you say, would be the tips that you would call out as things which you must do to really, kickstart this and to make it part of the organization's, key objectives?
Well, I think there's no shortcut to it, but I think one of the things that's really helped me since I was charged with starting our reporting back in 2008 is just you have to build really strong internal partnerships and relationships. You have to help educate the rest of your organization as to why this data and this type of disclosure is so important and the role that they play. And then, now that we have created some processes and about how we go about collecting that data, we can get them up to speed right away on that. My tip would be is sort of define some processes if you're just starting, make those connections with the right internal stakeholders and forge a partnership, and then help walk them through the process in terms of doing it right.
Yeah, I think definitely agree. Having that cohesive unit of unified objectives, being able to have those common goals is really critical. This isn't an operation in a silo. This is the entire organization that needs to feed into it. And Sharon, for yourself, what would be your tips for?
I think that's exactly right what Ginny said. I think the biggest tip is to really understand the partners internally that need to be engaged together as you're building this, and all contribute to this. I mean, it isn't in just one department, just like SEC reporting doesn't lie in just one department. It takes inputs from everybody and supporting the same way. This is sustainability reporting or ESG reporting is not a market thing. It is a business record, needs to be treated. New and different types of partnerships in this endeavor are really critical going forward. Don't overlook the financial folks. They're so helpful in help set those processes and controls that are needed going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Exactly that theme of reuse, lean on what's come before. Utilize what the organization has already built is definitely critical. So, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind sliding forward, running to fairly well on time. I think we're not too far behind schedule. So, wanted to quickly talk about. I think where Solidatus fits into this picture very, very briefly, and I think we've touched on a lot of themes here, but really this theme of trying to demystify the complex, trying to understand how all of these different parts of the organization, the process flows, the data flows, the policies, the regulations, how they all come together is critically, I think, one of the key sweet spot for Solidatus, and really why we've been involved with the ESG initiatives that the EDM Council has been working on, because this is an area that we think has huge potential to leverage data management techniques to really fast track and not have the same kind of long process to getting to what good looks like that we did through financial reporting. So if we move to the next slide. And so if we look at this in terms of a supply chain, I think from our perspective, there's lots of different pieces of this puzzle that need to come together. Being able to get that data into a central store, and there's a question which we'll come to after that, how do we centralize this data? How do we use kind of a common store for a lot of this data? Being able to put those controls, those processes in place, having that data governance there, understanding the lineage of the data that is coming through to the reporting obligations. This is, it's a supply chain, it's a data supply chain, and we really need to break it down into the constituents elements. So if we look to the last slide, and we've got a couple of questions which are coming in, which is fantastic. And so I'm going to do a very quick, if you click, Michelle, hopefully the video will start, but looking at something that Solidatus is focused on. So here you'll see a large number of the different disclosures, and being able to pick a particular item and drill down to, where do our scope 3 data captures come from, and where is that being then reported? So we can look through different taxonomies of reporting. We can look at how this affects the organization from multiple perspectives. So taking lots of different data and actually visualizing it for simplicity is something that Solidatus has been doing for a number of clients in the ESG space. So without further ado, then I think we have a couple of questions to fire off. If there's any more, please do lodge them. I think we've got a few minutes left on the clock. So question here from Philip. So what are the thoughts on a central repository, and e.g. a data lake, to get all the data you need for different aspects of reporting in one place? Do we want to, Sharon or Ginny, have either of you taken that approach in your organization of kind of a centralized repository to bring all of this information together?
We're in the process of moving towards a solution like that. Being able to, we have enough disclosures going out to different, to CDP, to DJSI, to, or the S&P CSA, and then for our own integrated report, that we are now looking at moving to that kind of a model, particularly because anybody that's done reporting knows when you get to the final stages and you make a change, then you might suddenly have to go through and change it in 12 other places. So just for efficiency's sake, it seems to be like the right direction for us.
Yeah, and we're doing the same, Phil, actually, developing our own central repository, but building on what's available now and what we have been using. We know that's going to take a while, but that's on a fast track as well. And I think what's going to make that a lot easier is as the industry or, across the globe, as things really converge to a, single global set of reporting. Certainly that will, I think, help accelerate the availability of tools like that. That'll be more universal beneficial, if you will, no matter what sector or segment of the economy your business is in. So.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really good point there, that move towards standardization, the move away from 20 different taxonomies or 500 different taxonomies to describe this space, but to move towards a standardized approach where no matter what industry you're in, you're able to use the same reference terms for reporting. You've got the same, standards around collection and quality and controls. I think that's certainly something that I think we're all hoping will iterate forward towards. And I think we're probably now at time. Michelle, please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd like to thank the panel immensely. It's great to hear the insights from specific organizations on how they're attacking it, and really then also from Eric giving that much more broad view of what the industry that the EDM Council is seeing. So thank you very much everyone for joining. If there's any further questions, please do submit them and we'll make sure a response goes out to you. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.